this is a tough question. I think there's changes that need to happen on several different fronts, DJ. It has to
Yeah.
be from the organizational side where they bring in different sets of people.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be from a regulatory side where they demand this from companies that are building tech and testing these technologies. Also from the market side, right? So consumers need to be very strong about their convictions, how these technologies are being built and used.
Mm-hmm.
The underlying element of it all is mindset shift.
Mm-hmm.
This mindset shift needs to happen across the board, where we need to create an understanding that tech knowledge, technical capabilities come in different packages. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be a male person that has tech knowledge. It can be a woman. A lot of people would look at me and have made comments to me that I don't look like I'm someone who knows how to code, but I've been coding since the 90s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is still a mindset shift that needs to happen. And that's probably the hardest part.
Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. My name is Dirk Jan Upkes, and on this podcast, I give the women who work in tech the platform they need to inspire and empower each other. Join me on a journey into the world of entrepreneurship, funding, biases, and role models to discover the strategies for success in the tech industry. In other words, how women can disrupt tech. Are you ready to listen? Hey, today's podcast episode is in English because I have the honor to interview Kamales Lardi. And Kamales is an expert in the world of digital and business transformation and also a startup mentor. She helps organizations to implement tech in a sensible way. In addition, she is a strong advocate of diversity in the tech world, and she has over 23 years of experience in implementing the latest digital and technology solutions. Some of the lists that Kamalesh is featured in include the top 10 global influencers and thought leaders in digital transformation, the top 50 women in tech influencers, and the international 40 over 40. In today's episode of Women Disrupting Tech, we will talk about her book, The Human Side of Digital Business Transformation, and we'll also discuss technologies like AI and blockchain that are shaping the tech world, the difference in adoption between people and the organizations that they work in, and of course, about her journey as a woman in IT. Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech, Kamalesh Lardi. Welcome, Kamalesh. The question I always ask at the start is how you got into your current job or how you got into your current position.
Thank you for having me, first of all, DJ. It's really a pleasure to join you here today, especially since you're discussing a topic that's very close to my heart. My
Mhm.
career, so I've been in the tech and consulting space for over 23 years now. Got into technology, almost by chance. It was the mid 90s, and I was looking for something to focus on in my university degree and ended up doing computing and information systems. And
Mhm.
this is fairly relevant because back then I was one of the few women in my class, doing coding and really developing my technical skills. It wasn't a area of focus at that time for a
Mhm.
lot of people, and I
Yeah.
was really encouraged to go into more female friendly types of jobs. But I was swimming against the current even back then, and I found that I really do have a talent and passion for this industry. And so over the years, I joined a company like Accenture, as well as Deloitte. I was the head of Deloitte Digital in Switzerland for a couple of years. And at that point, I decided I would like to start my own business. And this was something that was part of my ambition and passion. Since I was a kid, I always knew I wanted to be a business owner. I just never knew in which area or how. It was kind of
Mhm.
a conceptual goal in my mind. And when I became a parent, it became very clear that consulting lifestyle was not suitable as a parent. There was too much travel, there was too much of a demand, and I wanted to create or design a new kind of career where I could merge and balance, being a parent and having kind of my own personal life and development with a successful career. And that's when I started my own business in 2011, end of
Mm-hmm.
2011, 2012. And it has been a very exciting journey since. And I've done quite a number of things, which, again, being an entrepreneur allows us to do. I've not just focused on my career, but I've been able to go into teaching, lecturing at universities. I've written a book. As you know, I recently wrote The Human Side of Digital Business Transformation, which was published by Wiley. And I've been able to mentor startups for a number of years. So it allowed me to kind of do a range of different things as well. And so I'm quite happy that I was able to embark on this journey, even though it was a very challenging journey. I
Mm-hmm.
have to say I was quite happy to be able to do that.
Okay. Two follow up questions. Uh, you said that you got the advice to go into more female friendly areas. Why did you decide to pursue the coding part, the coding and the technology, even though you got the advice from probably your parents and people around you?
It was mostly family and relatives around me, and I have to say one of the reasons they probably pushed in that direction was out of concern that being a minority within a certain type of career could be more challenging. They wanted more stability for me, so I very much, maybe back then I didn't understand it as much, but today, being much older, I definitely understand motivations for them to do that. I stuck with tech because I found it very exciting. And even back then in the 90s, it was already a very dynamic field. I found the challenge exciting. And when I started doing the university courses, I found the computational thinking, logical thinking,
Mm-hmm.
structured analytics, breaking problems down into smaller pieces and then resolving them through code, and the excitement you get when when you're able to compile your code,
Yeah.
right? This
Yeah.
excitement, that made me very passionate and drove me to stay in the field. But when I went into consulting, my first job was with Accenture. I realized very quickly that tech wasn't the only element. You needed to be able to develop technology and implement technology that
Mm-hmm.
had a value proposition in the market. And that's why
Yeah.
the combination of tech and business, bringing those elements together and really building things that the market wants and needs,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I found real talent for myself. And I've stuck with the consulting industry ever since.
Okay. And you decided to, at first, you decided to go into consulting, and then at some point, you found out that it didn't fit the stage of your life that you were in with a small child. And later, you went back into consulting.
I started my own consulting firm, so
Yeah.
there's a difference. And I have to clarify though, I was very much discouraged when I left consulting. Um, my reasoning was I wanted to create or go into an environment that was more friendly for a balanced lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that every individual needs to have balance, right? It cannot
Yeah.
be all work and it cannot be all play, but you need to have kind of balanced elements. And again, everyone around me discouraged me because I was a foreign woman in Switzerland. I was told that it's very difficult to start a business on your own, particularly in consulting. I don't think there are very many consulting firms, or not that I'm aware of, run by women in this region. And so I was very much discouraged. Client acquisition would be tough. You don't have a recognized brand. And it was tough, I have to say, right? The journey was tough. But I was able to design a different kind of consulting lifestyle, one that is more suited to human values and people. And I've found that journey very satisfactory.
Okay. And what does this lifestyle look like? What is the key difference between, let's say, traditional consulting and your way of doing it?
I've been able to leverage the digital capacity or capabilities quite a bit. So,
Mm.
more control over my time, for example. I get to choose and decide what kind of projects I want to work with. I, decide to work with people who value relationships as well. I also do, I have to say, during COVID, it was quite a challenging period for many organizations.
Yeah.
But I was able to switch our company very quickly into a fully digital environment and retain the customers that we had because we had this very strong personal relationships.
Yeah.
It allows me to deep dive as well into a lot of the work that I want to do, and also delegate where I want to. And so I think the biggest element would be flexibility and control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's shift gears a bit because you're a big proponent and advocate of diversity in technology. Can you explain why you believe this diversity, and not only in terms of gender, so not only male female, but also culture, knowledge, and sexual orientation is so critical when you design a technology solution?
I truly believe in that diversity element, right? Having different kinds, and for me, diversity really comes down to diversity of thought.
Mm-hmm.
And diversity of thought comes from these range of diverse sets of people from different backgrounds and different beliefs who come together.
Mm-hmm.
And we need this diversity of thought when we are building technology solutions that are going to impact masses of people.
Uh-huh.
And these are transformative solutions. So I'm talking about, ranging from things like healthcare solutions, where you apply, today you're seeing AI-based solutions, for example, being applied across a range of different healthcare solutions, from diagnostics to research and development and so on. We're also seeing technologies impact financial services and
Mm-hmm.
how finance is managed, how wealth is distributed, how wealth is built, how we create financial independence. We're seeing technologies being applied in the legal industry as well, and in HR and recruiting and basically every part of our lives. And as we build these solutions, we need to ensure that we're building solutions that are including different types of people, that are providing for different types of people. And one of the things that I've learned over the years, and this is, something that I also bring forth in the book, is you are not aware, we are all not aware. And first of all, let me qualify that every human being has some kind of bias.
Yeah.
This bias comes from the fact that we are brought up in a certain way, our families have certain values, our cultures share certain values, our beliefs in religion or in politics, all of
Mm-hmm.
these elements create some kind of bias in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And this is okay, this is normal. As a human being, this is part of who we are. The challenge comes when we are not aware of that bias. And oftentimes we are not aware of this bias until someone from another view or perspective opens up their perspective to us and we realize, we have a bias in this area and they have a different view of something.
Yeah.
And this kind of bias is often built into the technologies that we're building. It's often built into the data that we're using to create technology advancement, so like AI based systems. And we need to become aware of what these biases are in order to address them. Now, if we think about the number of companies, the number of leadership, across different organizations, executives who are either already implementing such technologies in their companies or open to that prospect in the next 1 to 2 years in
Mm-hmm.
using these technologies. Um, the amount of bias that could potentially be built into some of these transformative solutions are quite incredible. And in order to alleviate that, we need to make sure that not only the developers or the people building these technologies, but also the testers, the people testing the technologies, include a diverse set of people. And this, I believe very strongly in it. And the tech industry is not fulfilling this, or it's not, bridging this gap yet. And so this is what I'm quite passionate about.
Okay. And what do you think needs to happen in order for the tech industry to start bridging that gap?
This is a tough question. I think there's changes that need to happen on several different fronts, DJ. It has to be from the organizational side where they bring in different sets of people.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be from a regulatory side where they demand this from companies that are building tech. and testing these technologies. Also from the market side, right? So consumers need to be very strong about their convictions, how these technologies are being built and used.
Mm-hmm.
The underlying element of it all is mindset shift.
Mm-hmm.
And this mindset shift needs to happen across the board, where we need to create an understanding that tech knowledge, technical capabilities come in different packages. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be a male person that has tech knowledge. It can be a woman. A lot of people would look at me and have made comments to me that I don't look like I'm someone who knows how to code. But I've been coding since the 90s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it is still a mindset shift that needs to happen. And that's probably the hardest part.
Okay. Do you see changes in terms of generations? Because before we started recording, we were discussing about your daughter, who has a entirely different perspective on this from where we are.
Absolutely, and I do cover this in my book as well. And I do have a section where I've described her case example.
Uh huh.
She obviously, like many children of her age, have grown up in an environment. They are the first generation of kids who have grown up in a fully digital environment, right? Our
Yeah.
generation X was the last generation that had a non-digital environment in our childhood.
Yeah.
And so I think they have grown up with a certain level of sophistication and digital savvy that have
Mm-hmm.
allowed them to develop certain knowledge and understanding at a very young age about what they accept in the world. You're seeing this increase in awareness around climate change,
Yeah.
increase in awareness around what diversity is, and acceptance of diversity, acceptance of differences, demanding for more equality. And we're seeing this in many fronts, right? Not only in terms of like the schools and in education systems, but in the types of jobs that people are looking for. And I think this generational shift, this mindset shift, that's happened in this new generation is going to be very exciting. They're demanding for new types of work, demanding for new values. What I've personally seen, and we've seen this across different studies as well, is this need for more meaningful work, not just work to earn a living, but meaningful work, something that's contributing to a higher purpose.
Mm-hmm.
This new generation of people are demanding for that, and companies are not really able to deliver that yet, right?
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Uh huh.
So I find this quite exciting that the new generation are demanding for this. The millennial generation triggered it. The Gen Zs are starting to live it, and the next generation, the alphas, are really going to be the ones that are going to ensure that it happens. And they're the ones. The other element we talked about earlier as well was there are options today, right?
Mm-hmm.
In
Yeah.
our generation and the generations before us, there were very few options. You had to get an education, you had to get a degree, you had to
Yeah.
get a job in order to earn a living. Whereas today, the digital savvy young people, they can start a company and start earning money online with different sources of incomes at a very young age.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the top earning YouTubers is probably like he started earning at 7 and he's now I think 10 or 11 years old,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
this is when you have financial freedom and options to earn, you
Mm-hmm.
don't need to go into environments where you're not happy in the type of work that you do. And I find this an exciting shift that's happened.
So you see the change in two ways actually. One is that the number of possibilities to earn money and to gain quote unquote financial freedom have increased, but it's also that there's more uh, actual demand for that variability. So would you then think that it's also going to be that the problem sort of resolves itself? The problem of have diversity sort of resolves itself over time because it's going to be enforced anyway.
I'm truly hoping that it will. The question is that going to then be absorbed into the traditional corporate structures, which are still fairly
But
fast? So
do
there's a gap.
but don't those traditional corporate structures have to change because of the simple fact that they're consumers and they're well, if you can call them employees, their potential employees change.
It depends. I'm hoping it will,
Uh-huh.
and I think the fact that companies are facing an environment where they will lose these next generation of customers and employees if they don't change. The companies that realize that quickly enough and do create systemic change within their organizations will be able to, I think, survive and thrive in the digital economy.
Mm-hmm.
But we also saw an example. If I take a parallel, during COVID, many companies had to shift their mindsets towards work from home and
Yeah,
had to accept this work from home environment. And
yeah, hybrid.
it was a, once in a lifetime shift of the way we work, right? And many people, actually, including myself, thought that would last. But what we're seeing today is companies reverting back and starting to demand people come back to work physically, and to be present in the physical environment. And I've heard many examples in Central Europe where we have companies like this. So it's going to be interesting to see, and there's been a pushback from people, right? And
Yeah,
then we have this kind of flood of tech company layoffs that's happening on top of that as well. So I do fear that maybe some organizations will take a little bit longer, and that might create an existential crisis for them. In the meantime, the gig economy is exploding,
yeah,
and people are creating side incomes and starting their own businesses and kind of developing in that sense. For example, we're seeing a massive shift in freelance work,
yeah.
where even healthcare professionals, there's a shortage of nurses, and nurses
Mm-hmm.
are now going into kind of as a service freelance environment, where
Mm-hmm.
hospitals are paying double, triple to get the same workforce back,
Yeah.
especially to work challenging hours like late shifts and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are seeing these healthcare professionals actually completely transform their own industry by going into this gig environment. And platforms that are coming out of that, that are offering, book nurses and so on, rating the nurses and things like this, which is something that we, probably 5 years ago we could not have imagined happening in healthcare.
No.
So this, for me, it's a transformation in process.
Yeah. And that makes it a very interesting time to live in. I At least I think. So,
Absolutely, I fully agree.
so let's go to your book, because in your book there's an interesting graph all the way in the beginning about the impact of technological change on inequality, and what you see in the graph is that inequality becomes bigger over time. How does that impact women? And the second question is what should we or can we do as a society about that to shrink the inequality?
So the reference there, it's something that I feel very strongly about. It is the digital divide, and
Hmm.
the digital divide. If I revert back a little bit to the COVID discussion,
Hmm.
during the pandemic when we went into lockdown, there was a lot of hype in the news about how digital acceleration happened,
Hmm.
where you had digital acquisition channels and new areas of digital acquisition happening, industries that were not typically physical becoming
Hmm.
digital, not typically digital, shifting into that digital environment and so on.
Yes.
What we did kind of neglect was this increase of the digital divide, which is some areas, some communities, and some regions that didn't initially have access to basic infrastructure like internet connectivity became a lot more isolated in that environment because they had no access to the physical elements as well. And as a mentor, I also mentor underprivileged women in the tech industry in certain regions. And so during that time, I had the experience of mentoring a young lady who was a coder for a startup.
Hmm.
And she was, in university and working as an intern at the startup. And when COVID hit, had to return back to her village. And being in that environment where you're suddenly back into this very traditional environment, completely isolated, no access, no connectivity, and going back into a very patriarchal traditional environment, she actually faced a dangerous situation where she was being told to get married and stay home and to quit her work and her studies. And so there were many instances or cases like this where we saw women being repressed or not getting access to what they need. On the flip side, I think technology does create opportunities as well. So if we look at certain developing regions where mobile banking or digital wallets allowing
Mm-hmm.
women who go to work to control their own finances, where previously they would have had to take cash payments for work that they did and hand it over to their spouse or to whoever was running the family. Now they had a mobile wallet where they could actually keep the money for themselves, even though they didn't have access to a physical bank, for example. So there are
Mm-hmm.
many instances where technology does create the opportunity for creating financial independence, and with financial independence for women comes more equality, comes more control and power.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have two sides of it, right? The digital divide, so basic infrastructure, increasing the gaps. And on the other hand, technology being able to create opportunities for women as well. And also, I mean, let's not just talk about underprivileged women, let's talk about women in the corporate world, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Knowledge about technology could help you stand out and advance your career, especially knowledge about new tech and advanced and emerging tech like blockchains and AI based systems.
Yeah.
There aren't enough people in the corporate environment who have deep knowledge about these areas. Knowledge and information today is democratized. It's fairly easy to get certified on some of these new tech capabilities. The knowledge is not as technical as you would imagine, so it's you're able to access courses where you can build up knowledge fairly easily without a technical background. And so I find these great opportunities for women to stand out in the corporate world as well. And I think what companies can and should be doing, especially tech companies, is starting to think beyond the commercial opportunities of this tech and also start thinking about regions that don't have access, right? So I would look at people like Elon Musk and so on and ask them, what are you doing to create more internet connectivity in regions that don't have Wi-Fi or internet?
Mm-hmm.
That's almost a basic need today.
Yeah.
So this would be, some of the things that I think corporate environments and businesses should start taking a look at.
Also, really spreading those technological development and advancements into, let's say, still developing areas,
Mhm.
like rural India, maybe.
Absolutely, and certain parts of Africa.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what you'll find in those regions, because I do work with people in those regions, what you'll find there are these curiosity, openness, innovative thinking, and
Mm-hmm.
an appetite to learn and grow and develop, and this kind of inner fire
Yeah.
where they capture knowledge and build on it. And I find this really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it's always something that surprises me. If you help people understand what certain tech is about, that they just run with it,
They
and
run
it
with it,
doesn't
yeah.
really matter if they're male, female, from Africa, from the Netherlands, from wherever. They just run, especially young people, and I think that's also what gives me a lot of hope in terms of the whole diversity discussion and more a more equal world. So later in your book, the human side of digital business transformation, you tell the tale of two former startups, two we all know, Uber and Airbnb. Uh, what is the main lessons that founders can learn from that tale?
So in the book, I do describe these two startups as opposing types of organizations from a
Hmm.
culture perspective, or
Yeah.
from how the values that they've built within the organization. And a lot of that was defined and set by the founders. So the founders do play an incredibly important role around the kind of organizations that they're building up. And this has been my own experience as well as a startup mentor for many years,
Hmm.
where I mentored companies that were developing tech solutions, either fintech or blockchain tech type solutions. And what I found was there was always a lot of focus on the technical solution, the
Hmm.
solution that was
Yeah.
being built, and its technical capabilities and what it can do, and very little focus on, especially in the first few years of starting up and growing the company, very little focus on the type of company you're building.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the fundamental difference between a successful startup and a company that's going to become a disruptive company in the future. I think it's this element of understanding you're not just building a tech solution that you can commercialize, but you're building an organization structure which involves purpose, values, the right kind of people, the combination of skill
Yeah.
sets, and a closeness to your customers, all of these elements. So, really building an ecosystem. And what I would say for founders today is keep these things in mind on day one, right? Think about the kind of company you want to build, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be, purely tech focused and just a commercially successful company. And you can see this with many of the unicorns. And I think this is some of the issues you find. There's a lot going around on the internet today around the Forbes lists, right? You have
Yeah.
the Forbes founders who are on front covers, and today many of them are in prison or have turned out to be fraudulent people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think comes down to really thinking about the kind of company you want to build, and also a call to investors. Don't just look at the financials of that company and the financial prospect of the company, but
Mm-hmm.
really what kind of values do the founders bring? What
Mm-hmm.
kind of values do they propagate within the organization, and the kinds of people that they're bringing together to build a company? There was one tech startup that I mentored that's today is fairly successful in the blockchain scene. They were 9 guys altogether who basically came together to build a tech solution. And it was very interesting because I was their mentor, but I was the only woman in that entire structure.
Uh-huh.
And they had really a challenge because they were a homogeneous team with very similar mindsets. And they really had a challenge to understand anything beyond the technical needs, right? So things around building your commercial business, going to market, creating a value proposition for your customer. For them, having women in the group was a lot to do with HR and marketing, whereas it goes bringing together the right set of people to build your organization and to build the right culture. That wasn't something that was in the mindset at all. And so this was a major part of a lot of our discussions, because there's so much focus on building the tech solution
Mm-hmm.
and very little focus on building your ecosystem. And that's the essential message from my book: is companies need to build that ecosystem in order to stand out in the digital future.
Yeah. And so Airbnb did do this. They did focus on the let's say the more the soft the cultural aspects of their technology, and Uber didn't. So explain how this divide ended up ultimately.
Um, so this was Airbnb, and I think the example that I described was both companies stuck to their values, right? So one had the kind of mission statement that they wanted to belong everywhere, and this is the kind of the motto of Airbnb,
Yeah.
whereas the other Uber had go get it, which was kind of this very A type,
Yeah,
commercial.
disruptive, really.
It's both companies were disruptive in the market, and both companies were born out of this kind of share economy environment, and
Hmm.
both companies stuck very much to this values that were set by the founders. But
Hmm.
the values were very different. One company wanted to belong in its environment. One company, Airbnb, wanted to create an environment where people belonged, where
Hmm.
people felt comfortable, that was very focused on the customers.
Hmm.
And this was reflected in the way that, the kinds of people they hired into the company to lead the organization, in the kind of success, how they measured success, how they addressed problems when they were faced with issues around regulations and pushback from the hotel and tourism industry and so on.
Hmm.
They took a much more collaborative approach and more engaging approach with the market, and how they treated their people as well was very different. And on the other hand, you had Uber that rewarded commercial success but not good behavior. And so there were many incidences of sexual harassment in the company, and
Mm.
poor behavior that became very public a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And these elements were based on the values that were built around the company. And so I think both companies stuck to their values, but they had very different opposing kinds of values. And we did see the outcome of that coming, especially what happened through COVID, and how the companies survived beyond that, and the kinds of organizations they've built beyond that.
Uber really had to do a step back. Airbnb, of course, also, but that was more by the nature of COVID. But I agree that Uber came out far less good than Airbnb, because they were back in business the moment things opened up. They were
Absolutely.
Everyone was flooding to the app and to the site again.
Absolutely. And you also see this in the way the company reacts to incidences of safety for
Hmm.
customers,
Yeah,
right? So there are many cases that have been reported on Instagram and TikTok from customers where Airbnb warns them of an unsafe environment and allows for them to quickly leave that space. And
yeah,
on the other hand, you have many incidences of passengers in Ubers that were sexually harassed or attacked, and the company almost taking a non engaging approach to that, or
yeah,
responding only when it hit the media and things like that. So I'm not saying that at the end of the day, who am I to judge, right? We can say examples and things like that. But I come very much from a perspective where companies need to be more than just financial outcomes.
yeah,
Companies have a role that they play in our kind of global community, and they need to represent good values
yeah.
because they are part of our global community. And this is where I'd like to see companies shift away from just a commercial focus, financial focus, into kind of being part of this global ecosystem.
Yeah. And that's also what your advice to founders then is, when they want to build a transformative startup, do this right from the start.
Absolutely. And this is where the chapter of the book goes into creating your purpose,
Hmm.
defining what your purpose is as an organization, and defining what those values of of your purpose is, and attracting people that believe in those same values. And I have other examples in there like Adobe and of course Hire and so on, that demonstrate how they've created this value, and these values then attract the kinds of people that help build on these values.
Hmm. So, okay. Um, can AI play a role here? Because we discussed AI is also coming, so artificial intelligence is also coming to the HR domain. Do you think that
Um,
it can help companies in general to make the right hires?
So this again, DJ, I think extremely. It could go really well, or it could go really badly.
Yeah. Huh?
So if you see, there's a recent study that indicated over 60% of HR executives are either already using AI to make hiring and firing decisions, or considering using it in the next 2 to 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So this means there are a lot of people in charge of jobs out there who are looking forward to having a system help them decide who to hire and fire, and when to make these decisions and how to make these decisions. The problem with this though is oftentimes data that's being used for these types of AI based HR solutions are based on trend information or existing information.
Mm-hmm.
And this information or data could be biased, or oftentimes is, right? So if you think about someone looking to hire some people in for an executive role, historical data would show that most executives,
Mm-hmm.
even successful executives, but most executives have been male, white, probably 50 plus or
Yeah.
40 plus years old, of a
Mm-hmm.
certain profile.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean that's the only type of profile that will be successful in the future, but the system would interpret it that way
Yeah.
based on historical data for a lack of diversity in the data. So this for me is challenging. If I take my example on LinkedIn, I still get job recommendations on LinkedIn as a assistant, right? And 23 years into my career, I've
Yeah.
never worked in that area, but I just still do get recommendations. So it tends to make you wonder what information or data, are they basing this on?
Yeah.
And if I look at someone with a similar profile and seniority as myself, from a different gender or a different race,
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure they would have a different recommendation, or at least not as a executive assistant kind
No.
recommendation. So for me, I think AI plays a significant role in accelerating the kind of work that we do, taking out a lot of the redundant work,
Mhm.
optimizing, and creating efficiencies where necessary. At least today in this current environment and how the systems are built, they can create a lot of efficiencies in HR and people management,
Mhm.
but they shouldn't be 100% reliant, and this is where the human element comes in. It's so important to have people involved in that process to make sure these decisions are being made in the right and fair way, and that
Mhm.
we are taking into consideration things beyond just trend data and past
Yeah.
information. Look at alternative profiles, look at opening up, and look at profiles that could create that has potential rather than profile that has. And a lot of times women face these challenges, right? Your profile shows more potential of what you can do rather
Yeah.
than historical proven capabilities, simply because we don't get as much opportunities to do the things that we would like to do.
Mhm.
And so I think having these human elements help us judge hiring, firing, and people management and talent management capabilities are so important.
Yeah. So what I hear you say is basically AI as a technological overlay of human capabilities could be fine, but it shouldn't be left to the AI alone. And we should also take into account that that AI is fed with data which is from the past, which by sort of by default is keeping the status quo alive. So it's
Absolutely. And
so
I
in that
think
sense,
technology like AI, if I could just finish, is an enabler. It
yeah.
enables more, it
Hmm.
enables faster, it enables better. But and you could argue, platforms like generative AI that could, not just based on historical data, but could generate its own perspectives on information, could be valuable as well. But
Yeah.
if you look at a platform, and I posted this on LinkedIn a few weeks ago, where I tried to request images on Midjourney, which is a platform
Hmm.
that creates generative AI images.
Hmm.
So I typed in, I would like to see pictures of a doctor. And
Hmm.
obviously, all of the pictures were middle aged men. And then I requested nurses, and they were all young, pretty
Female.
women.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I did the same with engineers and so on. So there is still a significant amount of bias in the way these systems work. And so, if I were to depend on that system to hire the best candidate for a prospective job, I
Yeah.
think there has to be a certain human element overlaying it, definitely.
Yeah. And also perhaps built in to the AI to tell the AI, okay, you can give me, let's say, 10 candidates, but please give me at least three that are not uh, your standard default fully matching the profile, because otherwise I end up with 10 of the same people that I already have on staff.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's only as intelligent as the way we use it.
Yeah, I think that that is a really great way to summarize. So I have an arrangement with one of my previous guests, Jacqueline van den Ende, to make this podcast irrelevant in around 10 years from now. Um, what would be your expert advice to achieve this?
This
And
is a very
irrelevant,
great.
maybe for context, irrelevant in this case means that diversity in tech doesn't need any special attention because it's, yeah, it's the normal way of doing things.
It's a tall order. I think my personal view would be there are a couple of things that need to change.
Mm-hmm.
I would call for an overhaul of leadership in many of the tech companies,
Mm-hmm.
because leadership does set the tone for how the organization behaves. We need more diversity in the tech environment, and we're not seeing that change as quickly as we need to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think having the right people in those lead, and it's not just about having a head of diversity and inclusion,
Yeah.
many of whom were actually laid off in recent tech layoffs as well. So
Oh.
it is about having, leadership teams that believe we need that diversity. So we're not really there yet. Smaller elements around, we need to have, I think we need to first stop calling women tech leaders and just calling them tech leaders
Mm-hmm.
or leaders. I absolutely despise being called a woman leader. I think I'm just a leader, and that's that.
Mm-hmm.
We need to have more events and panels that are diverse. We still have so many events that have non-diverse panelists who don't present the views and perspectives. So these are smaller elements. I think the systemic changes would really come when organizations change, and that comes with leadership shifts as well.
Yeah.
So 10 years is a tall order, I think. But if you are able to create that shift in mindset in the leadership environment, then we'll definitely see a change.
Good. And then we'll need to hope that it continues. So maybe take a bit longer than 10 years.
Just one more point, DJ. I
Yeah.
think we also need more men like you, right? Because we need guys advocating for women
Yeah.
and sponsoring women,
Yeah. I think so
right?
too. Well,
And
that's,
the men in the industry who have the voice and who have the power, putting more women forward. I think
mhm.
that could be extremely helpful.
Yeah. To be honest, I think we need to do it together. So it's not let's say a female fight to do to have. It's something we need to collaborate on and work towards together. So
Absolutely.
I agree there. So that's why,
Awesome.
but that's also one of the reasons behind my podcast in the first place. So yeah, I think that's a wonderful point to wrap up. Thanks for the wonderful conversation. Really enjoyed all your insights. My last question is: where can listeners learn more about you, about your company, and especially about your book, "The Human Side of Digital Business Transformation"?
Absolutely. So I am available on kamaleshlardi.com. My company is lardipartner.com. So please look it up, and I will be happy to share some of these links. My book is available on Amazon and most of the online sales environments, or even in bookstores.
Yeah,
I do believe there are stores in Netherlands that sell the book as well.
yeah,
I'm happy to share the links for that. And I'm very active on LinkedIn and Twitter. So if
good,
your listeners would like to connect, I'm happy to engage directly as well.
good. I'll look up the bol.com. This is sort of the Amazon of the Netherlands. Uh,
I'm pretty sure it's on
it,
there.
it, it should be on there. So, and
Yes.
otherwise, it's a good prompt for them to start including it. Thanks for the conversation, and listeners, thanks for listening. Well, that's it for this episode. Thank you very much for listening. Kamalesh and I hope you enjoyed the conversation. And please let us know what you think of it via our social media accounts. You can find the links to Kamales Lardi's website, her social media profiles, and her book in the show notes at womendisruptingtech.blog. There you can also subscribe to updates so you are the first to learn when new episodes go on air. To hear more episodes of the Women Disrupting Tech podcast, please follow us at Spotify, Apple, or Google. And if you do, we'd love to receive a review or rating because that way you can help other people discover the podcast. If you want to contribute to more diversity in tech, please share the podcast with friends, family, and co workers because this way you give my guests the platform they need to make this podcast irrelevant in 10 years from now. Finally, if you want to connect with me, that's possible via the website, but also via LinkedIn. Just type in my name and you'll find me because there's only one Dirk Janukus. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode.